welcome everybody to this lovely Thursday night. So I am gonna start with this shot by Maryam. And am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is it Maryam?
Yeah, Maryam.
Maryam. Okay. So
Mhm.
Maryam has this updated shot. Let's see if I can show the previous. That's previous. It's the updated. I think that's really nice how you added um, just much more exposure here, kind of pushing the light here. I think the one question I have is right now uh, is this is your character lit by the same light as the spotlight?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have played a bit with the light decay, so it might not affect it as much as the wall.
Yeah, I think the one thing it's what we might want to do is I think your character's feeling probably a little bit overexposed, and it might be the specular. So she almost feels a bit porcelain, like a porcelain doll. So, do you have any subsurface scatter on her skin?
Yeah, it's very little though, but I can try boost it for the next one.
Yeah, I think I'm like seeing it like in the nose and like even like where this uh, Terminator is. It feels like very diffuse, where I would expect some scattering going in there. So you might want to play with that and see if you can get some of that in there. The other thing that you could do to help kind of shape her is I would just probably take the exposure down on her, just maybe by a half stop, and then add in, and you can probably do add in a general bounce. So like if the light is hitting the ground, you can add in a little bit more bounce kind of to these areas and then to her as well. So like
Mm.
and even like I would potentially even expect kind of like the light bouncing back a little bit onto her. So like just getting a little bit more shaping happening. Um, so I would add potentially another bounce in here. It doesn't need to be
Mhm.
like super strong. It's just a little bit more to kind of get a little bit shaping underneath these these areas here. Um, and a lot of times too, when we do like really hard, like for shaping of characters, we'll have like a harder light, so smaller radius, and then we do a a light just a lot of times just linked to the character, and it's a much broader light, and we shift that down just slight or shift it a little bit from where your key light is, and adds a little bit of a it creates like what's known as a wrap, and it softens some of these terminator points. So um, you can play around with like, and it's the intensity of it is not as strong as your key light, so you might have to balance that a little bit too. So I'm just looking at how can we shape your character a little bit more pleasing, and get like some of these like hard edges to soften a bit.
Mhm.
I love the DOF that you have here. This character is starting to read really nice. I think you can probably um, grad like so, keeping it bright here and then grad a little bit darker here. So let's just get it maybe just a little bit of shaping on this area. Um,
Uh,
this this looks awesome. This is beautiful right here. Um, and then I would probably take this down just a little bit. Like I would look at like whenever you're kind of creating your scene, I would look at certain like the areas that feel like really high contrast away from your character, and you just kind of like group it a bit. You start to group it with like this frame. So you take down this intensity a little bit. You group this with this frame, and right now why this has a lot more contrast is because it's a cooler um, it's a cooler hue. So you have a cool hue again, not only bright but it's cool against warm. So you create not just a value contrast, but a hue contrast too. So I would just potentially just take that down a bit as well, just to group that. And these are like small kind of notes, but they're things that kind of draw our attention away.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Sounds good.
The other thing I would try too is as after you bring down the exposure a little bit here, potentially adding like almost a reflection of this character, and maybe like having like a almost a bright spotlight like speck hit to like in her glasses. That might make it feel like there's actually lenses there. So it kind of gives us another kind of storytelling point of, oh, that's who's like it. And it doesn't have to be like super sharp. It can just be much more abstract, but it gives us that sense that there's that light coming from this person in the foreground.
Okay, cool.
And the last thing you can play with is potentially adding a little bit of like a volume coming from like, and you can fake it where you just have, so if like, if our, let's see here, if our point is up here, wait, this. There. So you can start to bring in kind of like this volume from up above, and then it starts to decay when it hits her face. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to be super strong. It's just another sense that there's like this light source coming off the screen.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this fringing is looking really really cool. I love that. Maybe even like you can soften this edge of the fringe so it doesn't feel like two circles. It's just almost like this fringe. If you look at like the reference, the fringing softens as it goes further out, and and you can all at the same time you can push the saturation on it even a little bit more to kind of get that real sense that the light is refracting through this lens, and the light is dispersing. So we have that shift, that hue shift of um, the warm rays are shifting a little bit further than the cool rays. So like that fringe would having a little more saturation would just add to like the sense that there's more dispersion happening.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think other than that, I think it's looking great.
Sweet. Thanks for all the tips.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck with the next round, and I'll still like if you can't get it in the next couple of days, I'll still check in and see your progress because I'm loving how everybody is progressing. So great work, everyone.
Oh, thank you. I'll try get it in as soon as possible.
Oh, no rush. So take your time.
Mm-hmm.
All
Cool.
right, I am gonna go on to the next one. So this is by Forum. Uh, Latest pass looking awesome. I think you're like super close. The only couple things that I have notes on is getting some iris shaping in there. So I would just get a little bit darker here, a little bit brighter here. Same with this eye. Shape those the same with this eye, just a little bit darker over here. You probably don't even need to brighten this up. I think it's just darkening more on that part of the iris. The other thing too is I think you have a little bit of room to decrease the volume I think the value that you have here is great, and I think you can probably go a little bit less density on this side, just a little bit more, just to get an additional sense of that decay happening. And I still think that she's gonna pop off the background, but it's a really simple read and it's looking great. The other thing that I think you can look at is it seems like your DOF. I'm not sure if you are separating this foreground layer from the rest because it feels like it's really sharp, the edges, where the alpha ends compared to where your out of focus parts are. So what we usually do in production is if we have layers that are going to be super out of focus compared to layers that are in focus, we'll separate them. And if you do have separation, then you might just want to check your settings because I would expect this to be a lot softer. And the last thing I think, and it's not really shown in here, and I think you have this great graphic look, but I feel like you have more room to add a little bit more halation. It's looking great here, like where you have that red fringe, but I feel like you have a little bit more room to add some halation or diffusion where the bright areas are. Like just kind of like pulling it off so it feels like you have this bright source. Other than that, I think it looks great. I think you have just some small little notes, and I think you have a nice image. Okay, so so this is Ingrid's. Is Ingrid here? No. So Ingrid, I think this is a great next pass. I think what you've done with a lot of the surfacing is looking a lot better. I would watch out and see, you might need to add more subdivisions to your trash bags. Right now it feels a little polygonal. I love the new surfacing that you have on your character for subsurface scatter. That's feeling really nice. I think in terms of lighting, I think on the ground you can probably take down the bump on the texture. It's starting to feel almost artificial, so you can bring down the bump a bit, and I think you can increase the albedo. Like if we're looking at this ground, it's not like black, but it feels like concrete, and concrete is a little bit more like mid-gray, like an 18% value of gray. So I think that'll help, you be able to get light on the ground. So I would try to really look at your reference and try to like emulate like what the ground is doing here. And going into lighting, I feel like what we lost a little bit. Let me go here. We lost a little bit of what this light is doing. I think you can keep that. Like keep what this, like this has a really nice graphical shape that helps us like read. And then it also has this kind of like nice conical area that it lights down here. I felt like that was working really well, and especially with like this what it's reading against this blue. I feel like that area was working really nice in your previous version. I think where the fills needed to come up were in the background, and those fills can be like, look at how cool this background gets. Like Like that can go very cool back there, and then have it grad where it's brighter up at top. You can see it here, like it gets brighter up at top and then darkens at the bottom. And I would still like it gets black in the back, like in these sections. So you don't want to go like fully black. Like look how some of this is reading. Like you're never seeing like true blacks, like only in like really dark certain crevices. So I will try to get like more like cooler blues back there, and then have a nice grad from top to bottom. And then in terms of your key light, I feel like that can. Okay, so I feel like where we want it. It's like we have that, and then we want this to kind of stretch to there. So we really want to feel that light. And I think once you adjust the surfacing, you'll be able to get you'll get more help with that too. And then okay, this is okay. Getting that rim on your character is really nice. And then I think, let's see. Once you get that in, once we get this back, that'll look really nice. And then I think for your volume up here, this is great. I feel like let's increase that, and get really again that nice graphic shape that I think you were starting to get here. And what you have is like that shape back here, like where it goes light to dark, is working really well. And I think really the fill back here can kind of just go up maybe another stop, and it's a little bit brighter back here, and that's where we get like the dark over light read and the light over dark, and then really like pumping up like this volume and having a little more warm saturation to it. So getting really kind of that nice like you're gonna get this, which is a great framing device. So you have the throw pattern on the wall, and then you have your volume that has another framing device for this character. And then if you're able to get this to have a more graphic read too, so that's where this goes brighter. That's where I think you'll have a really nice base. So I think great additional steps. I think just work on kind of just getting that shaping of the grads, getting the shaping of those graphical lighting elements to really like help frame these characters, and then bringing in like keeping it a little bit warmer in these areas, because we want to simplify this. We want to keep warm in these areas and then keep pretty cool back here. And then like cools in here as well. All right, but great job. I love what you're doing with the surfacing. It's looking really great. Simon, I love the next iteration that you have like just adding those hue grads in here really makes this a much more striking image already. So this is working really well. I think the only like suggestion I kind of have is I would go a little bit more neutral up here. And let me see if I can potentially just go here. So let's go brighter. So it's like neutral warm up there. And you see how it's starting to grad into this cool green. And then down here, it's not, I don't think it's as, like, it starts to get a little bit dirty just because of how the colors are mixing. So like this warm yellows against this blue becomes very contrasty and starts to almost feel a little bit dirty. So I think what you can do there is, let's see, I think, again, it's saturate. I think it's just going a little bit more neutral.
Okay.
So, let me take this over here. So it's just starting to go a little bit more neutral there. And you see how it just already starts to feel a little bit, it starts to feel like it's a little more analogous in colors. And when we talk about color theory, we kind of want some of these colors to be a little more analogous. And then this becomes more the contrast. This is the complementary color up here. So I think you can do that. And then I feel like what you can do is actually, so we have these nice warms up here, and then you can start adding in let me start adding in a little bit of like those cool fills. I like having it, like keeping it bright up here, and then you just bring in a little bit of more of those like cool fills in the key down below, and that just starts to like group with the background. Like it starts to feel like it's within the environment. So I think it's just those, like, you see how like right now this separates and it almost feels like it's like a cutout. Like this area actually starts to group a lot better because you have like, you feel like that it's coming from this green source, and having this like go neutral is totally fine. I think it's just more of like down below, you kind of just want it to group a little bit better.
I see.
But yeah, I think that, I mean, that's just some small, like, kind of additional notes that you can do, but I think it's in really great shape right now. And then the second one, I think, honestly, I think this looks great. I feel like you nailed it. I think it's really simple read. It feels like this image. The values are working really, really well. Our eye goes to where it needs to go. And I think like this exercise is in great shape.
Great.
So yeah, awesome job. I think real big improvements, and just the way you're starting to use your like, this is a tough assignment because you just have a flat background and you have basically a sphere. So to be able to get the shaping and kind of just having this feel within here is, I think it's great.
Thank you.
All right, so Andre, you're up next. I think you're super close. This is great. Love that background. I would just do a couple just small things. I would just bring up this desk, just the desk exposure up, maybe just like a half stop. I would also check your DOF to see if you can get this more in focus. More of like the foreground. Like, I think just as a read, it would be, the background looks great. I think just as a read, the foreground desk grouping with your character will help it feel like it's in the same area, the same plane.
Okay.
Like right now, it almost feels like we're in a soup where what it feels like is we have like a 75 millimeter lens, with a really shallow, like with like almost like an f-stop of like, or like 4.5, and like it like, but like what, and that's just the bokeh. That's just the DOF. But in reality, it feels like your lens is probably more around like the 50 millimeter, and your f-stop would be a little bit higher. So I would just try to see if you can get this more in focus, just so it helps like stay within like the same plane as your character.
Okay.
And then I think the last thing is, so this is great. You added this fringing, which is really nice. I think what you can do is take your initial key, because you have 2 lights, correct?
Yes.
So take your initial key and you can take some of that red value out. So this goes back to a little bit more neutral color. Keep the same value. Keep the same value, but have this a little bit more, like if you take the key and you remove some of the red from it, and possibly a little bit more, possibly a little bit of green, then it's going to go a little bit more neutral here. And the reason why I'm saying to go a little more neutral is because the color of your character's skin is when I squint my eyes, is starting to get to the same hue as the background.
Okay.
So it's just trying to separate that a little bit. And then once you do that as well, the fringing starts to become more apparent. Like the fringing starts to feel a lot more saturated. So I wouldn't touch your fringe light. It's just the initial key light that you adjust the hue on. So it's just balancing that hue, and that'll help like separate this character and then help saturate that. And then I think from there, were you able to get any of the eye shaping in?
Yeah, I try to put some on it.
I would just do it a little bit more. I think it's just I can see it a bit, and this is great. I think it's just the fall off just needs to be a little bit farther out.
Okay.
But that's starting to look really nice. And the last thing is I would lift the eye whites just in the fills a little bit more, just so we can get a better read on that.
Okay.
So it's like now I'm starting to get into like the very tiny notes of this image. So that means you're in really great shape.
Cool.
So yeah. Oh yeah, and the skin color definitely looks a lot nicer now.
Awesome.
Okay, so I think just those little small notes, and I think you're pretty much there. Oh,
cool.
I have one last challenge. This was not in the reference, but it might, and this is just a test. It may be pretty nice to start adding a little bit of like a volume off screen, like just a little bit of like kind of just coming into this into your from screen left and probably falling off pretty quickly, just to make it feel again like there's this light source off screen a little bit. I think Soul does that a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to check okay, I think I found. So if we look at this image, notice how like there's just a little, you feel like there's this little bit of volume right here.
Mm-hmm.
Like it gives that sense that there's light coming from that side.
Yeah.
I think it's like even here. You see, like right here, like we don't see the light, like we don't see the window, but you just get a little bit of that, and it starts to feel
Uh-huh.
like there's a light source. It gives it just a
Yeah.
little more depth. So I think you can start adding that in here, and it just gives it a little bit more of that depth.
Uh-huh.
So that's it. That's like a last challenge. Sorry for like the late.
Cool. No, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, so next is Ronald and Darwin. Oh wait, is Darwin in here? Oh, he was. Darwin was here. I'll do him next. But okay, so Ronald. I didn't have a chance to read your comment. Do you mind summing up what what you had mentioned?
Yeah, of course. Yes, I've basically did what you said, and I've tried adding some more saturation to the shadowy areas, but I'm not sure if it's enough. I've done it with mixing the albedo back on top, so that I can get some color actual value in there, because the original values were really close to black.
That's exactly as the perfect technique. Yes, the saturation in these areas in the shadows are looking really great. The only notes that I would have. Do you have cryptomats by chance?
Yeah, of course.
So like these green, like the green plants here, because of the hue shift between this and I'm not even like the hue shift between this and this is so like strong. It starts to become interesting to look at. So I would try to group them a little bit more together, so it becomes like one. Like when I talk about grouping, it's ways that we try to simplify areas, so our eyes go to the area like these areas. You see how there's a lot of contrast between hue and in value. That's where we want to look. But in the other areas, we want to feel like there's structure there, but we just want to like we want to kind of simplify it so we're not having to look at it. So I would try to like group these a bit together so that they feel like they're in the same area without like see how like your plants back here have less contrast. And what I mean by contrast, I mean the hue contrast between the yellows and the greens are not as much, and that's because you've added like volumes back there and atmosphere. But in the foreground, we don't have atmosphere, so we have to do it more with like just adjusting the hues. It might be the values as well. So I would just see a way, just tweak it just slightly so these group together a little bit more. The other thing that you can do is I would just take some of these areas.
Oh yes, I've been eyeing those as well.
Yeah,
the flowers.
Your eye starts going there, right? And because there's that actually has more contrast here than here. So our eyes will start to go here because it's just super really interesting to look at. So what you can do is just take those down, and then I would add in a little bit of vignette. So darker, so just a little bit of a grad from darker to this value. And that'll help us kind of, it shapes it a bit. So this doesn't just feel like one big flat, like kind of grassy area, but you can just as an example.
And only to the bottom side, right?
Yeah, it's only like, so it's wrong way.
Oh yeah, I see. I already have something like that set up. I just have to crank up the numbers then.
Yeah, so you see, like it's just like these areas. That's too much. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's like that. Like so that and keeping the saturation though. Like right now, I only did value, but you want to darken and keep the saturation a little bit more, and then just squinting my eyes. So I think you can take that dapple and pepper it in a little bit more. I'm sorry, I said put all this in shadow, but I'm thinking of a way to separate this. So like if you're able to get a little bit of like dappling just on this, like it might be just like this area, like right here, just so we can separate that from this dark patch right here.
Yeah. Okay. Could it be? Can you pull up the previous version? Sorry. So would that?
Oh yeah.
As it was, would
let me
be
see if I
same?
can find that. Oh yeah. I think you had some of that in the previous version. Yes. So yeah, I think it like so it's like kind of like removing this area and only dappling up in this area.
Mm-hmm. With the smaller patches of light, or about the same size would be.
I think it's like just like kind of like it's similar to this. It's just getting like this to like kind of just be over here.
Okay.
That I think that's it. I mean like that like other than that, this is looking really nice. Maybe let's see. I'm just trying to see if there's any other way to reinforce just how strong this value. And I'm thinking you can bring up some of these leaves just a little bit in value. Like just like the key side on here, just bringing this up a little bit, just so it starts to feel like there's that strong light source hitting not just this, but the top of this tree. So all the like these specular, like these like big kind of hits on the leaves, I would just lift them just a little bit more. And the reason why I'm saying that is it's just like we want to reinforce that there's this bright light coming from off screen. So if we like, and I think the way you have simplified this image looks really great. And it's just now it's like, how do we just kind of like make this feel like we have this really big sunlight off screen? And part of that is just bringing up some of these values on the leaves.
Okay, that makes sense. Making it more seem like one light source.
And not just one light source, but it's the same light source. Yeah, one. You're right. One light source. What am I saying? Okay. Yes, great work. Like I said, it's like super close. Just adding it, like taking down some of these bright spots, grouping some of these green tones with the grass, adding a little bit of dappling right into here, and then just brightening up these leaves a bit, just so. And it's just on this side. Like this is looking great. Like how it just like grads is looking great. It's just over here.
All right, and only the brighter leaves, I assume.
Right.
So like
You don't need to add
one.
another light. It's just taking what the light you have and adding more exposure to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so Darwin isn't here. I saw him earlier, but I'm gonna go over his image next. I'm just gonna bring this up. Okay, so this is the latest version. I think this is looking great. I love how there's like the grad going in there. That's feeling nice. I did a quick mock-up in Nuke I want to just show what you can start to do a little bit. So so what I was doing was I was just, and let me start from the top. So I took what you had in your background, and I don't want you to do this exactly. I'm just showing what what you're capable of doing within Nuke. So I took the background and I added like a grad to it, similar to what you were doing, but I didn't go like super far. I was just doing up in this top corner. And then the next thing that I did is I shuffled out the sun, and then oh, there, awesome, perfect. Darwin.
Hi, thank you. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Well, I just figured out what you said. What the problem was with Nuke.
Oh, okay, great. I'm going over your shot now.
Awesome.
So okay, so I am. Let me see. I think your updates are awesome. I just did. Let's see. Let me bring this over. I just did a couple additional updates just to kind of show you. So I just added more saturation to your halation here.
Okay.
You see how red that is? Like
Yeah.
it starts getting more neutral, but like when you go more saturated, it feels like it's overexposing. This starts to feel like almost like a cool, like almost like mist a bit. So
Okay.
and the reason why I say so, there's a difference. Like with this, where it's mist, that's known as in lighting Rayleigh scattering. The way, or actually, this is me scattering. So the way the light goes through mist, it creates almost more of a neutral color to like the volume, where halation is a lens effect. It's an aberration. The light is so the value is so high that you're just getting the pure color of the pure color of the light. That value or that hue starts to bleed. So that's where like adding more saturation is going to make it feel like halation.
Okay.
The other things that I was starting to do is, so I have it a little bit darker up at top and with that cool, similar to what you're doing, but I just added a little bit. It's just a little bit darker up there.
Okay.
And then I have more saturation in here. So let me show you like what I was starting to do with that. So I just shuffled out the sun, and I took a luminance mat of it, and I have it inverted, so I have it like only on the outside. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of just getting some of these like fringing. It's a fake fringe.
Okay.
I'm adding like some saturation to it because this is supposed to be like later in the day, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
So you're gonna get more of those warm, like larger warm tones coming in. So I just added this fringing to this. And again, like what I was mentioning to everybody earlier is you don't have to do this exactly. I'm just showing you the techniques that we tend to like to do to kind of in Nuke to kind of push an image. So you can do fringing here. So and Andre, the way I was telling you like your technique, that's how we get it in render. The way where we have a larger light, and then a smaller light to get those fringing. What I'm showing in here is just an additional technique to get fringing in comp. So two different techniques. Oh, sorry. Andre, did you have something?
No, that's it. Good.
Okay, so and then I just used that grad. So this is the math I'm doing, and I'm just adding warmth to the ground. This is if you don't have crypto mats, by the way. You can do a lot of things with your grads. So what this does now is you see like the key light is still neutral, but it's the fringing around it that makes it feel warmer. And then, so that's what you were doing there. So this is where I was adding a little bit more of that saturation in the volume. Let me go back down here. So now on your character, what I was doing, I just did two things. I just graded. This is like a vertical grad. So we do this a lot with our characters. I just graded, or I just took down some of the bounce at the bottom of your character just so we can get a little bit, so it can sit into the frame a little bit more. Still keeping bounce, like we still want that bounce. And then I just increased your key just a little bit more.
Oh, I did that on my latest one, the one that I sent you, I think an hour ago, something. I think this one, but maybe, yeah, that one. But I think maybe I have to push it a little bit more. I'm not sure because it looks different on Nuke than when I render it out as a JPEG. I don't know why. Like it looks like a little bit washed of saturation.
So maybe,
but just
maybe your gamma is. Let's see. Let's look down here really quick. That's sRGB output. Try. So yeah, JPEG is definitely not a lossy. Is a lossy. Okay, so yeah, you're gonna try doing a PNG. Still want sRGB when we output. So try doing a PNG when you export it. But it seems like there's potentially a color transformation happening where the gamma, it's being gammaed up just a little bit. And that's what tends to make things look washed out. And that you probably are losing a little bit of your darks in there as well.
Okay. Maybe a color correction note before I write it or something. No.
I mean, you could potentially, yeah, do a gamma node beforehand, just slightly gamma, and it also, I'm also seeing that quality is okay. So that was when I changed it back.
Yeah, because I had it at 1.
It's at 1. Yeah, that's fine.
And
okay, so going back to the image.
Yeah.
Then. So the next thing that I did was I added a little bit of defocus to the foreground. So like, and I know in your shot, like what you can do is you can actually start with this a little bit like when we land, you start defocused here a little bit, and then when this character starts talking, you can rack. So then this character goes out a little bit, and then this character comes back in.
So what happens when the character moves forward?
So what you're going to do is, so you see this focal point, or this focal plane. So the focal point is right here.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we probably want to copy it. And I'm cloning these nodes, by the way, just so that it's all the same. So, like, we should get, so if that's not getting it, let me actually look here. Yeah, that's looking incorrect. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna check the depth. So that's 15. So if I have the focal plane at 15, he should be in focus now. So now he's in focus. So
Oh, how did you do that? Sorry, how do you check the numbers?
I just went to the depth AOV, and then when I'm hovering, if you look in the red channel here,
Okay.
you see the values are changing. So I'm seeing, okay, it's at, and this is what's showing what the depth is. So it's at a depth of 15, around 15. It's probably like 15.2. And then what you do is, so most of the time this focal, yeah, I don't know why this isn't grabbing it. And oh, I know why. I do know why. Because it's cloning off of this. So it's grabbing the depth of that, and there's no depth here. So if we want to, let's do this. Let's try this out. So now, yeah. So now that I have in the correct pass, so now it's pulling this, and what you can do is you can key it here, and then when he starts moving, you move your you go up some frames to where he's and then you move your focal point again to get it to lock on that again. So you have to like
track it.
Yeah, track it a bit.
Okay.
So yeah, you can do it. You can put a tracker there, and you can track a point on here, and then you can have this focal point move with that tracker. But the one thing that you're going to want to do is the only downside is if you do a rack, you have to adjust this for the rack. So tracking might not be the best way. You might want to do it by hand if you're going to do a rack.
Okay.
So what I mean by a rack is your focal plane should be starting here on this character, and then when you want to have the focus on this character, you sample what depth this character is in, and then you shift it. So then you change the focal plane to here. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, but when he talks, actually, he gets his own like child shot when he talks. So I think.
So then you can probably keep it on this character for most of the time.
Yeah, the only concern I had was when the character was moving forward, because it would, like, I thought it would change the depth of field, or no?
So like when it's moving forward, you just keep this focal plane on the same depth as this character.
Oh, okay. So I don't have to track anything or animate any point or.
You'll have to animate your focal plane.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so that was that, and then let me go back to RGB. And then the last thing that I did is, and I might have gone a little bit too extreme. Okay, so I took your kick that you have here,
Mm-hmm.
and I warmed it because I'm just looking at, hey, like what's going on in the scene? I don't see any cool like light. So
Yeah.
to me, it feels like that bounce should be warm. And then it takes a little bit of focus off of this character as well. And then the next thing that I did is I just took down his fill a little bit. And again, I think I might have gone maybe just a little bit too far with that. Yeah, that feels a lot better. So I just brought the fill down to kind of keep with like the depth cue. Like when he has a lot more fill, he starts to feel a little bit flatter, and we're just trying to get a little more shaping into him.
So when you're merging every change to it, do you do a plus operation or?
So you do a from initial. So you shuffle out the AOV you want. So I'm shuffling out the fill here,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm doing a from, and what that does is it removes it from your RGB.
Okay.
And then
You put it back.
and then I do the grading on it, and then I plus it back in. So from is a subtraction, plus is a plus. So I'm subtracting all of the values, and then I'm plussing all those values back on top. So this is a subtractive method of grading. So I just took down a lot of those fills, and then let's see here. Let's go back here for a second. And and then I took down some of your like that inside, into that inside. Again, I'm just trying to get more shaping on this character and have him set into the foreground. And again, it might be a little bit too strong. And then the last thing that I did is that I just brought down some of that sun, just a little bit on him, but it kept that kit. So I just trying to get the focus onto this character a little bit more.
Okay.
And then I think you had this in here already, and this is
Yeah, I had the diffusion.
Yeah, so you already had diffusion here, and now you can see what that diffusion does to the fringing. Just pushes it a little bit further. And what we're doing in here is now like our foreground character is and let me see if I can push this a little bit more. That might be too much. So now.
So you don't need. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go for it.
No, so you don't need it to take any CPass out of the like on separate layer to use the CD defocus, right? So you can just use the C node with the pass already in it.
Oh yeah, you don't. Yeah, the Z defocus.
Yes.
Yeah, since I'm using the depth channel.
Okay.
The depth is already in your AOV, so it's just pulling that depth. And
Okay,
it's
sounds
calculating
good.
based off of that. So now you're starting to focus a little bit more. You're having this cool to warm grad, this dark to light grad, light to dark. So it's like you see how we're starting to shape this shot a little bit more. Just like with hues and values.
Yeah.
The last thing that I would suggest is on these plants, you see how super saturated green they are?
Yeah.
That kind of like that feel makes it kind of feel like it's a little bit artificial. So like when we look at, okay, so this is a bamboo, right? Bamboo backlit. Bamboo leaves. Oops. Oh, that was it right here. See how it gets a little bit more like yellows? You see in here?
Okay.
It starts to be, it's more yellow, and then it gets a little bit more into those greens when it's not in light. So a lot of times with leaves, it becomes more yellow in light rather than like super saturated green. And then the other question I have is, on this stem, do you have the diffusion on the stem as well? Or not the transmission?
Yes, like everything's part of like it's all in one.
Got it.
So
what you can do is I would try to make your transmission, or it's diffuse transmission, correct? I would try to make that more yellow.
Okay.
And see what that gets, and that gets you. Because what you want to try to, I would put like the best thing to do is like when you have like these situations is pull up reference. That's what I would do this all the time. Like in some of my shots, I actually went because I had plants as well in some of my shots. I actually went to a plant store because I didn't have plants at home, and I took them and it was like sunset. It was getting close to sunset, and I put the plant up in the light, and I took pictures of it backlit. But that was just me like wanting to go out.
Yeah.
But we have so much reference online to kind of pull from that you can start to see now, like when you look at the reference, you can start to pull from that and get inspiration of, oh, that's what it's doing in light.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I think those are some steps you can take to kind of push this a little bit further. And I think like you're so super close. It's like these all new, like you saw, like all I had to do is really noodle a little bit in Nuke to kind of get it. Like I think your lights are basically there. It's just really, to me, it's like it's just more like graphic design now.
Hey. All right.
And I'll you mentioned looking at your other shots. I'll get to looking at those as well to see how you can start to get some same as's. So like when a shot's very similar as the other one, we call it as same as. So what you can start to do is you can already start to apply like this setup to the close-up to this character.
Okay. All right.
All right. So I think that is it for tonight. Any other questions by everybody? All right, then. Then everyone have a great evening. Awesome work. Great job. And happy lighting.